Hi everyone, it is Sandra from Gracious Goodness Essentials. How are you? I wanted to jump on today and have a quick chat about chronic stress and adrenal fatigue. Two things that you've probably spoken about with friends over a glass of wine, but perhaps never fully understood what it means for your health and for your body. So today I'm just trying to let you know on a real basic level some of the key players, okay, with our hormones to do with adrenal fatigue and what that may look like in symptoms within our body, as well as some proactive self-care things that we can do to try and help our body be as resilient and healthy as it can be, okay? Because stress is one of those things, we accept that it is just part of life now, don't we? And never before in history have we identified ourselves as being so chronically stressed. There's certainly been some very stressful times in history, but they come and they go. But these days, so many of us are actually identifying as being chronically stressed. So what does that do for our body? So our body is designed for stress. It really is, but it's designed for that immediate stress. So when we see a danger that we need to run away from, our adrenal glands, which sit just on top of our kidneys on both sides, okay, around towards the back, they secrete some cortisol as well as other adrenaline hormones, okay? And that the cortisol tells our body that we need to put oxygen into our muscles. We need to make our heart beat a little bit faster because we need good blood supply and good oxygenation. We need to breathe faster. We need to keep everything on high alert, okay? Because we need to run away or deal with the stress that's there. The other thing that our adrenal glands do are that they secrete corticosteroids. And steroids are things that dampen a response, okay? So the steroids, they tell our digestive system to settle down. Our immune system to slow down and other non-vital functions within our body because we don't need them to run away from whatever that present danger is, okay? So it works brilliantly when you're being chased down the street by a dog, but not so brilliantly when you've got chronic stress that you can't seem to avoid, you can't escape, all right? And our adrenal glands are really resilient. They work really well for days, for weeks, for months. But we're going to look at what that may actually look like in our body and what happens when they eventually get so tired that they don't secrete as much cortisol and corticosteroids anymore, okay? So while we're in this heightened flight or fight response, things that we may feel are just jittery, you know, like you just feel unsettled. Your brain is kind of constantly on high alert, but as a result, it's kind of never really fixed in one place. Like you're just always kind of working out where the next stress is kind of coming from. Your thoughts are allowed to just kind of run away with themselves. You may find that your digestive system becomes really quite sluggish. Perhaps you don't go to the toilet as often as you used to, or perhaps you have some unexplained weight gain. You seem to, you know, like you're feeling lousy as it is because of all this chronic stress. But at the same time, you then go and tack on, you know, you pick up every gastro that's going around. You pick up coughs, colds, flus. You just seem to be really vulnerable to infection. Maybe your skin and your hair aren't looking as vibrant as they once used to. Your sex life has kind of gone out the window. You know, all of these things are symptoms of chronic stress, okay? And so let's work out why. So we said before that the cortisol produced all those fight and flight responses and the corticosteroids settled everything down. So when your digestive system is constantly being told to settle down, is there any surprise that it's not functioning at its peak performance? Yeah. And if you tell your immune system to settle down, all right, and not overreact to things, well then when bugs and things come along, it's not in that heightened position ready to fight off the offender. Okay. That's why you kind of get sick all the time. But there's something else that's really important to recognize. So our adrenal glands can go really well for days, for weeks, for months, even for years. But eventually they get tired and they stop producing the same amount of cortisol. So you might go, yay, that's awesome. The cortisol was the bad hormone anyway, you know, and the corticosteroids, well, they were making me fat. So it's great when my adrenal glands give up the ghost, you know, that's awesome. But it's not, because of course when something gets really tired, it doesn't go just back to its normal level where it's supposed to be. It kind of goes the opposite direction. Okay, so now we have a low amount of cortisol, that adrenaline hormone being put out. So we tend to feel a bit flat and fatigued and kind of a bit fuddled in the head, you know, as well as those corticosteroids that were keeping our immune system in check okay, and we're perhaps suppressing it too much, well, now it's allowing our immune system to kind of be overreactive. And one of the things our immune system does when it's overreactive is put out a lot of inflammation. So inflammation is a natural healing process of our body. Okay, when we cut ourselves, our body pushes like inflammation around that area because it knows that it is bringing along nutrients and the good blood cells that actually kind of help heal. But then once it's healed, the signals are turned off and that inflammation goes away. But what we've got is we've got a state of chronic stress. So that hasn't changed, but our adrenal glands are now no longer producing the same amount of hormones. Our immune system is allowed to go into check. Our body doesn't know where the cut is, okay, or what it is that's causing the stress. So what it does is it has a heightened response and it puts inflammation chronically kind of throughout our body. It doesn't know where it's supposed to fight, so it will just fight everywhere. So what does that do? What does chronic inflammation do? And you've probably seen in like some wellness magazines and things like that, this whole anti-inflammatory diet. This is what this is trying to help you address, okay? But what does inflammation do? So I've got a really good example. I think it's a good example because it affects so many of us. In 2017, over 3 million Australians suffered from depression. Okay, now you know that I come from kind of a science medical background, and so I see so many people on antidepressants, and typically the antidepressants really haven't changed all that much in the last few decades. Okay, and so they deal with serotonin, which is a happy hormone in our brain, and they try and improve the amount or increase the amount of happy hormone in our brain. But what they found is that when people were treated with antidepressants and cognitive behavioral therapy and things like that, the antidepressants, they seemed to work really well for about a third of the people. And then for another third, they didn't work at all. And then for the remaining third, it would kind of half work, half didn't work. And they couldn't figure out why. Why did it work so well on some and just not well at all on the others? So then they started doing some research. And they discovered two things which I think are really important. One is that only a small percentage of serotonin is actually made in the brain, so about 10%, and the remaining 90% is made in the gut. So this tells us that our gut is responsible for more hormone and neurotransmitter release than we ever thought before in the past, okay? So it's important that we look after our gut, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the other thing that they found was that people that had depression seem to have a higher degree of chronic inflammation within their body. So they did some tests and they were trying to work out, was it the depression that caused the inflammation, or was it the inflammation that perhaps caused the depression? And they found out that it was the inflammation that gave people the propensity to depression, not the other way around. Okay, so inflammation was a trigger for disease, the depression within their body. So it means that we need to look at the inflammation in our body as a real we need to address it as a preventative measure. And so where their medical research is going is actually trying to reformulate some of our anti-inflammatories to work as antidepressants. All right, so that's the way they're approaching it medically. But what can we do for some proactive self-care, and what can we introduce into our life to try and help us with this? So firstly, I guess we have to address the stress. Okay, we have to try and do whatever we can to minimize the amount of stress that we have in our life. And this is probably the trickiest, the hardest part of this whole conversation, is actually looking at that. And, you know, this probably isn't the time or the place to really go into it, but you need to talk to someone. If this is suffering, if this is pertinent to you, you really need to talk to someone that you trust or a counselor to try and work through some ways that you may be able to address the toxic relationships, the work stress, you know, the study, the financial pressures and things like that. We need to try and work out some mitigation strategies, but things that we can do and we can implement into our life. We can look at our diet. Okay, so I spoke about the anti-inflammatory kind of diets and foods. You only have to Google them, and you'll find that they are a lot of like the green leafy veg, really high in the good antioxidants. It might be things like legumes, lessening the amount of refined sugars and carbohydrates that we have. Caffeine isn't fantastic when we're already highly under stress. So really have a look at your diet and the foods that you're eating and whether or not they're promoting a really happy environment for your gut, or if perhaps they're promoting inflammation. Other things that you could look at, so our gut is our main elimination pathway through our body as well. So perhaps you might want to consider doing a gut cleanse. Perhaps in fact, I would really recommend that you look at taking a good nutritional supplement, such as the Lifelong Vitality supplements. They're a whole food nutritional supplement that covers off on your vitamins, your minerals, some fantastic essential oils, as well as your essential fatty acids. Look at a good probiotic like PB Assist, okay? So we know that our gut bacteria, our microflora in our gut is really important to keep our gut healthy. And even small changes, both good and bad, can make huge differences, both good and bad, all right? So we want to make sure that our gut has got the right bacteria, is being fed good, healthy, nutritious foods. And unless you're eating the colors of the rainbow every single day, which I know that I don't, consider taking a good whole food nutritional supplement as well, all right, so that we can really give our gut and our body everything that it needs to try and keep us resilient. So look at our food. We can practice something like mindfulness, which is a kind of a real buzzword at the moment. I'm not a huge fan of buzzwords, but it is a really pertinent one. So mindfulness is about being conscious of where you are in the present moment. It is being aware that our thoughts can sometimes race ahead of us, okay? And instead of being present in the moment with what the truth of the situation is right now, right this instant, our brain is already thinking worst case scenarios. Or perhaps we're playing with our kids, but we're still thinking about work, and we're not actually taking joy in the present moment, in the truth of the moment that is in front of us, okay? So mindfulness is about being conscious of those things, of really being aware of your environment, of being aware of the wind on your face when you eat something. What does it taste like? What does it feel like? And it sounds silly, but how often do you eat dinner and then have not really even tasted it because you were busy talking or thinking about something else, or you were watching telly at the same time? All right. So mindfulness is about being present in the moment, and that's been shown to be extremely helpful for dealing with stress and helping to minimize it as a residual in our life. We can look at some proactive self-care, okay? And so that's things like creating some rituals for ourselves that we value as important. And it may be that you are assisting your body with some essential oils, okay? Now, essential oils can work brilliantly. So I mentioned that they were in our Lifelong Vitality, our TGA-approved nutritional supplement, okay? But we can also utilize our essential oils both aromatically and topically as well. So if you were to think about rosemary and basil as being extremely supportive of keeping our energy high and of helping us to reduce stressful tension in our body, that when they're diluted and they're applied over our adrenal glands, that can be a beautiful support to our body. And then we could look at things like grapefruit, which is a fantastic detoxifier, but it's also uplifting. Wild orange, extremely energizing and helpful for clarifying the mind. Lavender is beautiful and relaxing, okay? So we need to take any moments that we can that help us to de-stress, even for short periods, to try and help our body become more resilient and to actually kind of build up strength, okay? So, if we just incorporated a dietary awareness, nutritional awareness, and trying to eat the colors of the rainbows, eat those anti-inflammatory foods like your green leafy veg, some legumes, avoiding the refined carbohydrates, the sugars, the caffeine, things that kind of are known to be inflammatory, okay? If we practice some mindfulness, actually being present in the moment, and then really support our gut with good probiotics and perhaps a gut cleanse and, all that nutritional stuff that we just spoke about, we put ourselves in the best position that we can to be strong and be healthy. Essentially, that's where I'm getting to. So if you understand what stress causes within our body, you can perhaps start to identify some of those symptoms and perhaps have a bit of moment of self-recognition that maybe my stress is actually impacting me, and then look at proactively managing ways around the stress, but also ways to support your body. And please, if you are feeling really unwell and you can identify with a number of these symptoms, please go and talk to your GP. Okay, because these symptoms can also be symptoms of other disease states in your body. So we need to make sure that you get a clean bill of health, all right, and then start working on your proactive self-care as well. So please talk to your GP about how you're feeling and what you're feeling within your body. Talk to a counsellor or a trusted friend about the stresses that you have in your lives and brainstorm with them ways that you can perhaps try and mitigate, and then look at and research some proactive self-care measures. And I really hope that it will help you stay happy and healthier this winter season and just feel better within yourself. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them under the post, send me a message. I would love to have a chat with you. I'll catch you next time. See you later.